Peoples of the worldwide federated internet, what's good? What's going on, people? It has been a while. I've tried to keep my videos to a 2 week span. I was trying to do every week. My schedule changed. It's been a lot busier, and hopefully I can get back to doing these videos more frequently. That's what I would like to do. So we'll see how God works that out anyway. Last time we left off in the book of Acts, chapter 7. If you don't remember, Stephen was brought before the council. They said that he blasphemed Moses and God, and Stephen is laying out a case, making a point before the council. So we're going to get right back into that. So without further ado, let's get into this. All right, so we are in the book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 10. Looking at my notes here. And delivered him out of all his afflictions and gave him favor and wisdom in the sight of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and made him governor over Egypt and all his house. So he's going over what happened to Joseph. I think I made the point before that Joseph is very similar to the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe he is a type of Christ. They sold him into slavery. They were going to kill him. Judah spoke up and was like, maybe we shouldn't do this to our brother. So they cast him into a pit. Some people came along. He was sold into slavery, sent to Egypt. Now, the reason I say, especially in this, he's a type of Christ, because they meant this thing for his harm. This is why they did this. They did not like Joseph. But unbeknownst to them, and them casting Joseph out and Joseph going to Egypt, he actually became their deliverer from the famine. In the same way, the Lord Jesus Christ was sentenced to death by the high priest for no reason at all. Spotless man, did no harm, did no wrong, followed God in every way, of course, the God man. And unbeknownst to them, his death would really get the victory over death and sin and the sting of the law, delivering everyone who would believe on him from that. And in that, we can see that Joseph, in so many ways, is a type of Christ. So they sold Joseph, but it worked to his benefit and to their benefit. And this kind of is reminiscent of what we see in the book of Romans, chapter 8. And I'll go there, chapter 8, Romans 8, verse 25 through 29. And you're probably familiar with one verse I'm going to get to in these verses. But if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. Likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And he that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit, because he maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his dear Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. And what I'm noticing in Joseph especially is what's stated in verse 8. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. So it's not, yo, this is what I want to do. God is just going to work out, exactly what I want to do. No, it's going to work out to God's purpose, not yours. Verse 11, now there came a dearth over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and great affliction. Our fathers found no sustenance. And that word dearth, I'm gonna get the proper definition. I'm pretty sure that means like a not a drought, a famine. I couldn't think of the word. So the word dearth means, and for some reason my trusty 1828 app sometime does not work exactly as I want it to work. So I'll just go to dictionary.com and look it up. I like getting proper definitions. That's just there's something about looking up words that actually helps you to understand context, even when you think you really do understand the word. So that word dearth means a scarcity or lack of something. And in that time, there was a lack of food. There was a famine. And Joseph happened to be in the exact right place to help his family, his brethren, through that famine. Verse 12. But when Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt, he sent out our fathers first. Now imagine if Joseph wasn't there in Egypt and Jacob sent the rest of his sons there for corn. I would imagine what probably would have happened is they probably would have been turned back. Maybe they would have been able to get the corn anyway, spent their money and get the corn. Not only did they get the corn, they didn't even have to spend their money. And they were afraid because they thought they had forgot to give the money to Joseph. They didn't know who Joseph was. If you don't know this account, go to the end of the book of Genesis. I think about the last, I want to say 5-ish chapters, and you'll see, all of these things play out. Verse 13. And the second time Joseph was made known to his brethren, and Joseph's kindred was made known unto Pharaoh. So the second time they came back to receive some food, some sustenance from Egypt, Joseph made it known. He revealed himself to his brothers. They didn't recognize him. And he also revealed to Pharaoh, hey, this is my kin. These are my people. So he was able to help and redeem his people from that famine. Again, sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Verse 14, then sent Joseph and called his father Jacob to him and all his kindred, 70 souls. So Jacob went down into Egypt and died, and our fathers. So this is where, they passed away in this place. Verse 16, and were carried over into Shechem and laid in a sepulchre that Abraham bought for a sum of money of the sons of Emor, the father of Shechem. So they weren't buried, or Jacob at least wasn't buried in Egypt. He was taken out and buried in this place. In verse 17, but when the time of the promise drew nigh, which God had shown to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt. There's so many similarities. And as I was reading and studying through this, I was like, man, there's a lot of similarities between what you see happen here before God delivered the children of Israel from Egypt and what you see with the Lord Jesus Christ manifesting on the scene before the death, burial, and resurrection. The children of Israel had multiplied. God was silent at this point in Egypt with the Hebrew people for like 400 years. They haven't really heard anything from God. And here it is. They're in Egypt, 400 years, really not hearing from God. Moses comes along to deliver the children of Israel. He has in his heart to deliver them. And the first thing that happens is he is shunned. Again, sound familiar? It's amazing how similar this is to what you see during the appearance or manifestation of the Lord Jesus Christ. And verse 18 says, "But when the time was promised, drew nigh," or I'm going to read verse 17 again, "drew nigh, which God had shown to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt till another king arose, which knew not Joseph." So now you have this king that comes up, this Pharaoh, knew nothing about the account of Joseph, knew nothing about how if it wasn't for Joseph, there would be no Egypt. They would have all died and gone by the wayside. But because of the wisdom that Joseph was blessed with, now the people of Egypt, they thrive and they survive. Verse 19, "The same dealt subtly with our kindred, and evil entreated our fathers, so that they cast out their young children to the end they might not live." Now, here's what's funny again. Another similarity from what you see happening during the time of the Lord Jesus Christ and what you see happening in Egypt at this time. And I do believe biblically this is foreshadowing, which is just God showing something that's gonna come in a like form in what happens before. So Pharaoh put out a decree that all of the young men of a certain age that are born, all of the male babies are to be killed. They're to be slaughtered. Well, Moses is saved from that by his mom and raised by Pharaoh's daughter in Egypt. And here's what's interesting. This was amazing about this. In this same way, the Lord Jesus Christ, Herod put out a decree to have all of the male children from, I think, up to the age of 2 to be slain. But before that could happen, an angel warned Joseph and Mary, "Hey, I want you to go down to Egypt." How crazy is that? That the Lord Jesus Christ would be essentially raised up from a youth at a young age in Egypt, very similar to what happened to Moses. Or you could say what happened to Moses is similar to what was going to come with the Lord Jesus Christ. Verse 20, "In which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son." So Pharaoh's daughter brought Moses up like he was one of her own. "And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds." Now what? Now you have to ask yourself, why is Stephen going through all of this? Remember, he's brought before the council. They told him, "Hey, you have blasphemed Moses and God. You've blasphemed the law. You've blasphemed God." And then Stephen goes into this long dissertation about Moses and what happened and delivering the Egyptians. When he first showed up on the scene, they didn't want to hear it. He slew an Egyptian for one of his brethren, and then he came back the next day and they were like, "Yo, are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian?" Then he fled the scene because he's like, "All right, the gig is up. Everybody knows what happened. Pharaoh is going to kill me once he finds out." But yet 40 years later, God sends Moses to the children of Israel as a deliverer. Man, in so many ways, these things mirror what we see happening later on. And I'm convinced this is the reason Stephen went back to this point, because the whole contention is the Lord Jesus Christ. And I think what Stephen is doing is Stephen is showing these people, hey, look, the same problem we had during the time of Moses, the same thing that happened, the same fallout, the same things that you weren't paying attention to is the same things you're not paying attention to now. So the same rejection that we saw with Moses, this is what you're doing with the Lord Jesus Christ. And I believe this is why Stephen went down this specific path and going over this specific account with the council right here. Anyway, y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.